Welcome back to The Chosen Life. I'm your host, The Chosen Lawyer, with co-host Wayne Frazier of Doug Laurie Sports. Wayne, welcome back.
Glad to be here again on this early Tuesday morning.
Well, time of taping, we just finished off Family Day and our long weekend in sunny, balmy, +5 Celsius, Toronto, Barrie, Ontario, Canada. You had a good family day?
I did actually. I didn't really do much of anything. I just did what I think family day is supposed to be, which is hang around with your family. So we played a couple of board games and had dinner around the table, and that was pretty much it. It was a quiet day for once. So
Not too shabby, not too shabby. I was coming back from Montreal, Quebec, host of the Elimination Chamber WWE
oh,
pay-per-view. Yes, these are important things we have to accomplish in life, and Wayne, I wish they had more open books on sports betting for wrestling because I could have written you those predictions of what was going to happen. It's so frustrating when you go to watch a tournament like that and you know the matches and you have a feeling of who's going to be winning ahead of time and your sources online are telling you what's going to happen and they were 100% correct on every single match.
yeah, and I think that speaks to I was reading a little bit on the signature spot on Facebook the other day, a little bit about a couple of just specific matches. Kamala's run in '84, the first one, and it seems like things have gotten so predictable now in the last, say, 3 to 5 years. There almost never is that oh my god moment any longer of a heel turn or something like that. And I think it just has to do so much with and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but with the wrestlers, the high end, more popular wrestlers having more say in what is actually happening and what's going on with them. And no, I don't want to throw that away or whatever. And I think a lot of it is just marketing. You've got to market so far in advance now that I think it's really tough to throw a big curveball. Suddenly we're going to flip this guy and make him a bad guy, turn him heel, right? I think it's really difficult to work like that. In when you're talking about, like you're saying, all these internet sources and all this discussion and everything else, but you're trying to plan. You had your event on the weekend that you went to, but they're planning 6 months down the road now about, we got to get ready for this pay-per-view and what's the angle here. And I'm not saying that didn't happen, back in the 70s and 80s, but I think it was a little looser then and there wasn't so much at stake. It would be really nice to see something like that. Just somebody who you would absolutely not expect to turn on a dime one night, right?
It's kind
But
of
I
like
just don't.
it's kind of like when you're watching Mayweather and McGregor, for example, and you're like, maybe McGregor is going to be able to beat Mayweather here. Maybe 15-0 Mayweather is going to lose to first match McGregor, and that's going to happen. And they hype it up, and you buy into the hype, and of course, it doesn't happen. In WWE land, you had the Royal Rumble and the Royal Rumble leading up to WrestleMania and the big return of Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes is a big, big deal, son of Dusty Rhodes. And lo and behold, he gets number 30 in the Royal Rumble and he wins the Royal Rumble. Go figure. So he's going to WrestleMania and he's going to face Roman Reigns for the undisputed Universal Championship. So in between that, of course, you got the Elimination Chamber coming up in Montreal. And who's the hometown guy? Sami Zayn. So how would it be great if Sami Zayn turns on the bloodline right before his hometown event in Montreal, Quebec, Canada? And so let's have him face Roman Reigns, and maybe there's a chance that Sami Zayn is going to take the belts off of him before WrestleMania, the same way that Conor McGregor is going to beat Mayweather. And you're buying into it, and you're hoping, and the crowd is going crazy. I knew this is not going to happen, and Roman Reigns is going to win. And of course, Roman Reigns is going to win because, of course, there's interference, which all my sources online predicted. And of course, then Romans is going to go face Cody Rhodes in night 2 of WrestleMania. And of course, Cody Rhodes is going to win it, bar any injuries, etc. So it's kind of a snoozer for me. Kind of like that would have been nice if Sami Zayn maybe won the belts and then perhaps lost them the next night or something, but made it kind of fun. The crowd was going bananas. Like they were cheering for Sami Zayn the whole time. It It was really cool to see the hometown guy and the hometown crowd going into it, Wayne. Like in any sporting event, that was a blast.
So you're more involved in the current wrestling scene than I am by quite a large stretch. How often do you get somebody that you flip the title for just a week? Does that happen anymore?
That was happening quite a bit in the Vince McMahon still era before Triple H took over. So, for example, you had the Intercontinental belt. You had not the North American Championship, whatever Austin Theory has right now, and it just the U.S. title, and they just keep. There was a point in time where like every week they would flip it. One guy would have it, the next guy would get it back, another guy would come in and grab it. It almost became like a joke. Since Triple H has come in on board, people are holding on to their titles now forever. You have Roman Reigns almost coming up to 1,000 days now of being the undisputed champion. You have the Usos, the tag team champions. They've held it for like 500, 600, whatever days they've held it. You have Gunther, who's held the Intercontinental belt, and he's had it for months now. So we had more stability, like in the Golden Era. Remember back in the 80s when Hogan had the belt forever and it was a big deal when he lost the belt? This is what they're priming towards again, and it's pretty cool. Like they're going back retro for this.
See, I see what you're saying, but to me, then what it creates is just predictability, right? In that you just know you're not going to flip Reigns at some weird time, right? And I can remember back in the 70s, right, where there would be a guy would win a belt, but it was more like, I guess at almost what you would consider house shows or whatever, right? That would be worked into the script. In the week in between, some dude came from out of nowhere or got the push, won and, beat Dusty Rhodes in his hometown, not in Dusty's hometown. And then Dusty comes back at the keel and boom, and wins it back, right? I just kind of feel like, yeah, it's nice to have stability, but stability is boring. And the one thing you don't want in WWE is boring, right? I could, if you don't like Roman Reigns, and I don't really care about Roman Reigns one way or the other, but you can pick whichever guy you want to say, whether it's your guy or not your guy. If your guy isn't Roman Reigns and he's been there for almost 3 years now, at some point you're like, I just don't want to watch this guy anymore. Especially when, there's all these other guys that I think deserve the shot. And they're never going to give it to him, right? So I like the instability a little bit more than I like the idea of we've got our guy. Look, I also don't, again, I'm not as involved in this as I used to be, but I don't put Roman Reigns on the level of Hulk Hogan in terms of popularity. He's not, because Roman Reigns is not a cultural phenomenon. He's very popular in the wrestling community, but there aren't people who are not wrestling fans wearing Roman Reigns t-shirts, right? He's not appearing in movies that have nothing to do with that kind of stuff, right? So to me, you've just set yourself up you're not extending this out to anybody else, right? You're not, I'm not going to say I was a big fan when Karl Malone or Dennis Rodman or whatever would show up. It was interesting, but it was so contrived also that it was just dumb, right? But to me, a 3-year run is also pretty contrived.
Well, I hear what you're saying with the Roman Reigns. If you are a hardcore fan, you're watching week to week. When Roman doesn't wrestle week to week, right? And when he does come out and the music plays and he's got his bloodline faction, it's pretty exciting. Like I gotta say, like in the Montreal crowd, they all hated him, but they love to hate him. Like you can't get your eyes off the guy, and he's done really well as a champion. But if you think back to the 80s and Hulkamania running wild and everybody talking about Hulk Hogan and going across cartoons and rock music and pop culture and everything else, not even close. I don't know if we're ever going to see another Hulk Hogan like that. You think about wrestling today. Wrestling today does not exist if not for Hulk Hogan, the way he changed the landscape. Absolutely.
Yeah, but look, you say that you don't think that that's going to happen, but look in the last 15 or 20 years. Mm-hmm. The Rock, absolutely. While not the level of the Hulk in terms of a broad appeal to everything and kind of touching everything, The Rock was almost that popular. John Cena, everybody knew who John Cena was and is, right? But nobody outside of wrestling knows who Roman Reigns is, right? You say to the average person on the street, Roman Reigns, and they're going to go, I don't know who that. Maybe I've heard of him at some point, but I don't know anything about him. I mean, I'm not completely ignorant about current wrestling. I have no idea of Roman's backstory, none whatsoever, because I just don't care. He's not intriguing to me, right? So I think that, yeah, you're not ever probably going to see something like Hulk again. I just don't think. I also don't think that part of the reason you're never going to see that again is just the fractalization of the media and all of the choices out there, right? Hulk could dominate. You've got him on a cable channel when cable just started, but then he's making appearances on regular TV. He's doing movies. He's doing Saturday morning cartoons, but still there's only a relatively limited amount of stuff he has to cover before he's sort of ubiquitous, right? You know, even Cena, there's some point where Cena can't be on everything, right?
Let me ask you this much, because you got me intrigued right now into these thinkings. Now, The Rock and Cena, the difference between them and Hulk Hogan, in my estimation, is this much. They became bigger than Hogan in some ways, but they left wrestling a lot sooner. Why? Because their careers took off outside of wrestling. Hulk Hogan, while he did great in Rocky as Thunder Lips, and not as great as Mr. Nanny, for example, but and the movie with Zeus, was it Over the Top or what? No,
Over the Top, yeah.
Was Over the Top. No, that was Stallone. Whatever the movie was with Zeus, I can't remember now. That's how great it was. But thinking back now, how many Hogan movies bombed and Hogan had to go back to wrestling, to his bread and butter, because it didn't exist. If Hogan's movies had taken off the way Cena and The Rock's movies took off, I think you see Hogan out of wrestling a lot sooner. So on the same token, if Rock and Cena, their careers don't take off in the movies, they're staying in wrestling longer. So I think in some ways they even became bigger stars, but they're outside of wrestling for so long now. Like Cena comes in and makes his yearly appearance. You can't see me. Great. The Rock is gone. Like The Rock, the big thing with The Rock, they're ready to push was in WrestleMania, because he's related to Roman Reigns, and for him to fight Roman for the head of the bloodline. But does not appear that that's going to happen, because The Rock is just too busy owning things, running things, and being successful. So in many ways, I can tell you Rock and Cena, in my estimation, are successful movie stars. A la Hulk Hogan was not.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I would agree with that. I would also say that you're absolutely correct in that Hulk Hogan is the brightest star that ever burned in professional wrestling, in terms of broad appeal and everything. The Rock, you're right. It was a shorter career, but it's because The Rock could do more things successfully too, right? I mean, I don't see John Cena in the same category as The Rock in terms of outside influence, because he hasn't really been all that successful making movies and doing other things. He's been in some stuff, but he's not, ubiquitous. That's kind of a tougher one for me to explain, because what was the appeal of that character to start with?
John Cena?
John Cena. Yeah. I mean, like, I kind of look at that guy and think it must have just been something to do with him personally. Because if you put that shtick or that gimmick on some other guy, that's not going to work, right? I mean, I just don't see that the popularity of that. Now, he's fantastic he's a great salesman for wrestling. He's a great salesman in the ring, right? But I look at that and I think, man alive, and I wonder if that's why he just doesn't cross over quite as well as somebody like The Rock does, right? The Rock had that personality and that build around him where you felt he could step out and just be an action hero right off the screen. Or right out of the ring, he could go right out and do something else. But I didn't see that with Cena. I didn't really even understand what the appeal was during the entire push, right? I'm wrong about that. He's incredibly popular and great at what he does. But, I just think that I don't know if there's ever going to be anybody even to get to that level anymore, right? I don't know if anybody, like, is there anybody you think in wrestling right now that, let's say that they deposed Reigns in the next couple of weeks or the next month, who's the next guy that could step up and be somebody beyond Reigns. I don't know if there's anybody out there like that, right?
It's going to be Cody Rhodes
Mhm.
right now, and good or bad, he has his charisma, he has his thing, and then the whole, fulfilling the legacy of his father, etc. But that's only going to go so far. That's going to go for a few months, maybe. With Cena, you know, as growing up as a kid, probably I think it was in Boston, if I'm not mistaken. He's watching his Marky Mark music videos, Good Vibrations. He's watching some House of Pain, and he's one day rapping on the WWE jet, and Stephanie McMahon hears him, and she's like, "Wow, he's pretty good. You should be doing this rapping thing as a character." He puts on the different basketball jerseys. He has the big chain on his neck and the hat sideways, and Basic Thugonomics is born, and fans really related to him because he was a rapper. He was actually a decent, rapper, singer, whatever. And he had charisma and spunk, and he spoke to that generation all of a sudden. He wore the jorts, the jean shorts, and he had the different basketball jerseys on, and people loved him. When he won the belt, they created a new heavyweight belt for him with the spinner belt, like the way the
Right.
spinner rims. And it hit at the right time with the right pop culture, and that's where people were at. And I think he capitalized on it really well. And since then he's got bad hair dye, and he's going into different movies and trying to be an action hero and trying to be a rock light, so to speak. But look, who can touch the Rock? If you think about how many movies, TV shows, he's got his own football league, his endorsements. Like, nobody is touching the Rock. The Rock is bigger than anything, and he's going to be for a very long time. But if he comes back ever to WWE, it's purely as a thank you, because I have no career. I have nothing if not for you. I was a failed CFL football player, and you took me on and made me into a star. So thank you. So I got to repay you. Whereas Cena, comes back more often because I think he's not as big as The Rock, number one, and he likes to show his gratitude more, and he still likes wrestling. I don't know how much The Rock still likes wrestling. So that's where they're at in the world of wrestling. But it's more spread out stars. So you don't have as many of the one, two, three, like the massive, massive stars anymore. You have more of the mid carders and bottom level tops guys, and the talent is more spread out. And if you watch it week to week, it's nice when the talent is spread versus just waiting on one or two people to show up every time. In my opinion, that's where they're at. But hopefully, we'll get you back into this, Wayne. And WrestleMania is coming up in April, and that's the biggest show 2 days. So maybe you'll be watching it, and you'll let me know feedback of how you liked it.
Who is the current Barry Windham? That's what I want to know. Who's the jobber? Who's the best jobber in the WWE right now?
You consider Barry Windham a jobber?
Well, not a jobber, but a guy who really never got a huge push and was on TV every week.
Oh, they got a few of them. Trust me, they got quite a few of them. So you got Baron Corbin, my guy. He's awesome, and he week to week, they give him a push, and as soon as he starts climbing up a little bit, he drops down again, has to change his gimmick yet again. That's a lot of fun. You got these guys by the name of the Alpha Academy. They come out every week, but one of the guys is a big guy named Otis. He's probably about twice the size of you, Wayne. Like, he is massive. And this modeling agency, the Maxim Models, are coming and trying to entice him to join them and become a model. So instead of Otis, he's going to be Otis. So they find their ways. It's great soap opera fun. It's a male soap opera. Let's just call it what it is.
Am I thinking of the right guy when I say Barry Windham?
You are.
That's the
And
guy who had the long losing streak, right?
no, you're thinking of Barry Horowitz.
Oh, sorry. God forbid. Sorry, Barry Windham. Barry Horowitz. That's
Barry
of,
Horowitz.
right?
And by the way, Barry Horowitz appeared on Impact Wrestling, which used to be TNA Wrestling recently. Out of the blue, they found him. He's in his 50s, if I'm not mistaken. And there was a guy who got a challenge. If he can go 50-0, he can challenge for the belt. So they said, I got a guy for you to fight. And they brought out Barry Horowitz, and he came out to the techno version of Hava Nagila, and he does his pat on the back. And Barry Horowitz won that match, actually. So I don't know how you figured that one out.
That is why I used to watch wrestling, because you would see more of that kind of stuff. Every once in a while, something would happen. You would just think, what in the world? Why are you bringing this guy out? Why would you do this? But that's a fantastic angle. And think about all the things now you could do with Barry Horowitz in Impact Wrestling. You could do an offshoot of the Barry Horowitz wrestling school, right? And you could have all these other low-level jobbers kind of fall in line and be like a stable for him. He could be like He could be like the biggest manager in Impact, right? All the guys would walk in line, patting themselves on the back, right? That's the kind of stuff that I miss. I don't see much of that anymore, right?
Well, I love the fact that they even used to call them jobbers, which means doing a job, which the job was making the people look better. But they're no longer called jobbers, Wayne. They're called talent enhancers, which
Ah,
sounds
I
really.
thought I thought people using talent enhancers got them in trouble with the drug testing.
That's what I thought, you know. And another group of talent enhancers that we need to be talking about today are your buddies, the Toronto Maple Leafs. You like that segue? So, uh,
before you
yes,
go there,
yes,
I know that this is going to air a couple of weeks, I think, after we tape this. Did
correct.
you watch any of the XFL on the weekend?
Absolutely not. The TV that they gave me at the Airbnb barely played Netflix, so no, I'm not to watch any of it, unfortunately.
I didn't either, mainly because I had a really busy weekend. Um, it's interesting because the St. Louis Battlehawks are back in the league, and they played, I think, the first game they were playing San Antonio. And I thought, well, I'm not going to get a chance to watch this game, but I am interested in this league. And they're doing a very good job of using The Rock to sell it, right? They have a ESPN Plus special called The 54th Man, which they're, very openly, this is the way they should be doing this. This is a way for guys who didn't get their shot in the NFL or guys who screwed up their shot. Josh Gordon is playing in the XFL right now, right? Martavis Bryant is in the XFL. But I thought I'm going to go take a look at the website for the XFL and look at the Battlehawks roster and see who I want to root for. They don't even have pictures of most of the guys up on the website yet. Like, and I'm not talking about Joe Schlabotnik that they just signed off the Prairie View A&M roster, and maybe we don't have a picture of this guy. The starting quarterback for the Battlehawks is AJ McCarron. They don't have a picture of him on the website. How in the world? And there's no link to, AJ McCarron to show you, to link to, like, say, Football Reference or something to show you what AJ McCarron's history is, which is a pretty important history. I believe Brian Hill is their starting running back, and he was drafted by the Falcons, a guy that I thought probably would have an NFL career. No picture. All they have is the roster number, what position the guy plays, and what college he went to, and that's it. And I'm thinking, how long did you have to set this up? And you don't even have pictures of the guys on the website. Like, my gosh, I don't know if I take that as the individual is not important in the XFL. It's about the team and the experience and everything. And I'm like, that's not why those guys are there. Those guys are there as a showcase to try to get into the NFL. For God's sakes, put a picture of them on the website. So I am going to actually watch, hopefully next weekend. I'm going to try to watch some of it. And, it's nice to have a St. Louis football team to root for. My understanding is they actually did come back and win the game. So they're 1-0. Here we go. All the way to whatever the XFL title game is. I don't know. I actually liked it a hell of a lot more when Vince was running it.
Okay.
When they had to sort of steal the bacon to start the game, right? The scrum at the middle and the $1 million game. Hey, that's great stuff. I don't understand really what the problem was there. I don't know why they didn't work.
Well, I promise for our next taping, I will do the research of what the semi rules of the XFL are and how they're different than the NFL and CFL. Well, now I can't promise about the CFL, but at least the NFL. And I will do my best to watch at least one quarter and report back of what I think, and we can discuss, certainly. But I am intrigued as well. Look, Rock bought this league on pennies on the dollar, right? And I probably not even a penny of his own money. I'm sure he has his backers. And it's kind of funny because, you remember the show Ballers?
Mm-hmm.
Very big show, right? And in the show, he ended up owning the Kansas City Chiefs, if I'm not mistaken. They ended up winning the Super Bowl. And then that's the same time when he starts up the XFL. Isn't that interesting how that works out, Wayne? Very interesting.
There is synchronicity in the world, yes.
So back to our jobbers, the Toronto Maple Leafs. So talent enhancers, as you would probably term them. Now, some in this fine province believe that they're going to be hoisting the Stanley Cup. And Wayne saying that this is not going to happen this year. They're going to get bounced out in the first round again by Boston or Tampa Bay. So Kyle Dubas watched that episode and said, Wayne Frazier of Doug Laurie Sports. I'm going to show you. I'm going to acquire the missing pieces. Ryan O'Reilly and Noel Acciari.
A
Um,
cherry.
a
Nola
cherry.
cherry.
Noel Cherry. Noel a cherry. Okay. So Noel Cherry and Ryan O'Reilly. I think the main piece there was Ryan O'Reilly, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, former captain of the St. Louis Blues, Conn Smythe winner, and having a down year and not having too much fun. And Patrick Kane watching this and saying, I'll score a hat trick just to show you what you missed out on. So when you watch that trade go down, Wayne, did you say to yourself, man, I'm eating my words now? I'm watching a future Stanley Cup contender, or this does nothing for me? How did you react?
It's not that it does nothing for me. I mean, I actually don't hate this trade. I don't think it's a bad deal in looking at it from the 30,000-foot overview because, yeah, you gave up picks, but your first rounder was basically going to be almost a high second rounder, right? Now, those are still valuable. I don't agree with giving them away, but like Dubas said, we have a pretty good stock right now of young guys that we really like. And we don't really have a lot of room to hire to add top guys. We're looking for more like third, fourth, fifth round guys, and they've been relatively successful at finding guys in that range. My problem with it is, again, adding a Cherry and Ryan O'Reilly is not going to make you better than Boston or Tampa Bay, right? Um, I just I don't see that this pushes them over the top. Is it possible they do something else to go acquire another defenseman? Maybe, and I have nothing against Ryan O'Reilly. I think that the idea that you've got now a shutdown center that you can use in the playoffs, that's great. But, that first game, they paired him with Marner and Tavares, and neither one of those guys can skate with Marner, right? Um, will Marner be able to adjust to the slightly slower foot speed? Will they move Tavares to the wing permanently? Are they going to ask Ryan O'Reilly to move out there? I mean, Riley's is able to do a lot of things, right? And so that is very helpful. You want guys who are flexible and have the ability to play on the power play or the kill or whatever. But I don't see this as making them good enough to beat Tampa Bay and Boston. Does it improve them? Sure. Does it improve them a whole bunch? I don't think so. I think it makes them marginally better, and I don't think marginally better is good enough to get out of the first round. I mean, do I think that you take a shot? Yeah, you make this deal if you're Dubas, whether you feel like it's going to make, because it was a first, a second, and a fourth, and in terms of money, everybody else ate the money, right? So you make the deal certainly if you're Dubas, because you now can say, hey, look, I went out and got Ryan O'Reilly, and they still weren't able to do this, and now we need to really think about kind of restructuring this team in some fashion and going in a different direction. But unless they're in on somebody like Timo Meier, which I don't think they can go get Meier now, they don't have the capital to do it. I think they're out on him. Somebody like a Luke Shen or somebody like that wouldn't cost a whole lot. I think that's not a bad idea. Kind of a butt beater defenseman is going to be maybe but there's nobody out there I don't think you can get that you don't give away the farm for, that you're not getting to the cup this year. It's just not happening, right? And you'll be lucky to get out of the first round. So do I hate the deal? No, I don't hate the deal. I understand why they did it. I just look at the team and think, I just don't think you can add much here outside of somebody like Timo Meier or somebody crazy like that that's going to make them a favorite over Boston or Tampa Bay.
What if you give Matthew Nice to Chicago? Chicago eats the whole contract of Patrick Kane, and Patrick Kane comes back to Toronto. Would you do that deal?
Absolutely not.
You would not do that deal?
No, not a chance. And this is going to sound, it's going to sound however it's going to sound. So Patrick Kane scores a hat trick against Toronto. He had 2 goals the game before that. And I hear people talking about, oh, he's mad now. Look, he's all mad. That's not a positive. If it takes you getting mad and getting spurned by the Rangers when they go get Tarasenko for you to come out and play at the top level you have available to you, That's not the guy you want on your team. I hate to tell you this, right? So I'm not saying that's what's happening in Patrick Kane's situation. I don't think that that's necessarily Kane's MO, but for people to say, "Oh, look, they got him mad," I mean, that's not a compliment. It means that he was slacking and playing below his level before. I think it's more likely that this is just it's a coincidence. Maybe he's a little more focused. I mean, that's natural, but again, we're going to look at, oh my God, he scored a hat trick against us. We got to go get him. No, we don't have to go get him. I think we talked about it last time I was on too, that there's some question as to how long Kane would last if you made a long playoff run. Is he going to wear down later on, right? Also, before I forget, if we're talking about the Blackhawks, man, I really, really hope that Jonathan Toews is okay. I don't want to speculate about why or what or anything like that. Just I really, really hope that his health works out and that he's back. If not this year, then playing next year, right? I don't think he wanted to be dealt anyway. I don't think Toews is the kind of guy. I think Kane wants to go. I think Kane thought he was going to the Rangers, and I think that it is what it is. The Kane could go to the Rangers if he just went to the Blackhawks and said, "That's the only team you can trade me to, and if you only get a third rounder for me, well then tough nuts," right? But the problem is now you score 5 goals in 2 games, and everybody in the world is back in on Patrick Kane now, right? So I still think that the best possibilities for him now that the Rangers are off the board, are Edmonton or Dallas. I think that's probably a real good shot. One of those two, right?
That'd be very scary to add him to the firepower of Edmonton. But they have a lot of the same issues I think the Leafs do as far as shoring up the defense. And their goaltending has gone better. They've gone better. I mean, it's a little scary still a little bit. I think the Leafs goaltending is much scarier. I was just reading that Michael Hutchinson, not the lead singer of NXS who passed away, but the goaltender.
The former Barry Colts goaltender.
Former Barry Colt is now back up with the Vegas Golden Knights. He's the 4th stringer, I believe. So that's a lot of fun over there. Thank you, Robin Leonard. But if you're the Maple Leafs now, Matt Murray's gone on long-term injured reserve. Do you go and try to acquire another goaltender, maybe somebody who's injured and can be magically healthy by the playoffs, or do you run with what you got?
I think Dubas has to be out there kicking the tires. I don't think anybody's really unhappy with Samsonov and how he's played. And again, it's not really a measure of your goaltending. It's a measure of your defense in a lot of instances. The fact that Patrick Kane gets a hat trick against you and you gave him on 2 or 3 of those goals, he had so much time with no real, defensive interference or anybody bothering him that, my gosh, I mean, somebody's got to go put the wood to him, right? But didn't happen. I don't know who's out there. Like, I don't know who's, they talk about John Gibson or somebody like that. And I guess if you could get him for next to nothing, maybe he's a good guy to have on the bench. I mean, he definitely is a good guy to have on the bench. You don't really want to go into the playoffs with Samsonov and then Joseph Woll or Shalgren or guys who are, nothing against Shalgren or Woll, but you really want another battle-tested guy there to be the backup just in case, right? But again, if it costs much in terms of draft capital or a prospect, I don't see the upgrade potential here of making it worthwhile.
I heard James Reimer might be available from San Jose. I remember him. Freddie Anderson might be available from Carolina, but I don't think we're going back to our exes because there's one rule of dating: you don't go back. So I think the Leafs will take chances with anybody else but their former netminders. But it should be an interesting playoffs, and it should be an interesting finish to the cup. I agree. I think it'll be interesting to see what the last move teams are going to make, especially the Leafs. So we talk about them a lot on the show. And let's see if they can bounce that monkey off their back and make it out of the first round. As we're talking about hockey players, I'm getting very excited here because I know you host a lot of sports cards shows and signings, and you have over the years. And you talked about Gordie Howe. We shared some Gordie Howe stories last episode. I was going to ask you, Wayne, that episode we ran out of time, but other signings that you've done in the past, any sports, any kind of celebrities at all, who's come down your doors, and any interesting tales you can share with us from autograph signings?
Well, I mean, we used to bring in, or I used to bring in an autograph guest every month or two, right? And my focus was always, and then you're talking now about the late 2000s through maybe 2015 or 16, was always the retired guys from the 60s. So Gordie Howe twice, Jean Beliveau probably 5 or 6 different times, and all of your retired Leafs, Bauer, Dick Duff, uh, Red Kelly numerous times. One of the best, probably the biggest event I ever did was we had a Vesna Winners weekend at Shoppers World in Brampton, that big mall down there.
Yeah.
And so we did it for 2 days, and one day, I'm not sure I'm going to get the groupings correct, but we had for the 6 guys, we wanted one from each original 16. And you have to finagle because some of the guys they played for multiple teams, right? And you can't get, so Dennis DeJordy represented the Blackhawks. No. Tony Esposito was in for the Blackhawks. We had Tony in. We had Dennis DeJordy, Bernie Parent, Johnny Bauer, Eddie Jockerman, and Charlie Hodge. Charlie was the representative for Montreal. Now I'm trying to figure out what was DeJordy in for. Because Tony would have. Well, anyway, those are the 6 guys we had. Tony came up, and when he walked in the door, this was probably 2009, 2010, comes in the mall wearing jeans, cowboy boots, button-up shirt with a bolo tie, right? Jet black hair. And I said, Mr. Esposito, I'm Wayne Fraser. I'm the promoter. Glad to meet you. Blah, 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 blah. And he says, oh, I'm glad to be here and everything. And I said, we have one problem, Tony. And he's like, what's that? And I said, you're not allowed to outdress the promoter when you come to the show. And he looks me dead in the eye and he says, Tony Esposito, my business is being Tony Esposito and business is good. That was a fantastic weekend. We had a great time. Charlie Hodge, who I believe has passed away not too long ago now. Charlie, who was about, if he was 5'6" or 5'7", I think he might have been standing on a phone book. But I sat with him for a while. Charlie was probably in his mid-70s at that point. Every time a pretty girl walked by, oh, I got to go get a cup of coffee, Wayne. Oh, I got to go to the bathroom. And I said, Charlie, come on, sit down. We got to do the autograph signing. Oh, do you see her? She's very pretty, huh? And I said, Charlie, you're in your mid-70s. And he just looked at me and he goes, so what? I said, okay, all right. All those guys were fantastic. I probably my favorite guest on a repeated basis was Mr. Beliveau. I mean, he was just class, right? The first time I ever had him, we did as a matter of fact, I just sold the last one of these I had. We did these 16 by 20 photos of him. And they're these pretty famous shots from the Montreal photographers, just with a black background and the players skating towards the camera. And Jean wrote down every single statistic, goals, assists. We wrote them all out for him. It must have been 25 or 30 lines of statistics. Order of Canada, La Grosse Bill, his nickname. Took about half an hour to do 9 of them. And this was in the pre-signing, because the way it works is you do pre-orders. And so if somebody has, like, say, 20 pieces they want to get done, or people mail things in, if your public signing is running from 1 to 3, you have the players show up at 11 or 11:30. You do a signing for half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour to get all that stuff done. Take a break, go have lunch, and come back. So we get done doing these 9 pieces that take 20 or 30 minutes. And I said, okay, Jean, and I've already paid him for the signing. And I said, here's, an extra something for doing that. And he says, oh, no, it's a part of the deal. And I said, John, you just spent half an hour doing 9 pieces. You have to be paid extra for that. Oh, no, I will not take it. And I said, John, seriously, here's the money. I'm going to put it in your coat pocket, right? He says, no, 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 you bring me in. Very, very nice guy and everything. Finally, I said, John, if you don't take this money, I'm going to mail it directly to your wife, Elise, and she will have the money. And he looks at me and he goes, I take the money then. He put it in his pocket, right? We went to Applebee's. I think I told you that story. We said, okay, so we've got lunch. We've got a lunch break. Where would you like to go, Mr. Beliveau? And I'm thinking he's going to want to go to the keg, something like that. And he says, I would like to go to Applebee's. And I said, Applebee's, really? When do you want to go to Applebee's? And he goes, I like Applebee's. And I was like, okay. So we went to Applebee's. And this is right when he was doing his big auction through Classic Auctions, where he was selling off a whole bunch of his stuff. And we sat there for about an hour. And my friend, Glenn Woodrow, who was the guy who helped me bring in players for a long time, who sadly passed away last year, he and his brother just went over to the bar and sat and ate their lunch and left me with John Beliveau for an hour, just talking. And he was just as interested in what I did as what I was interested in talking with him, right? It was just amazing. And he was such a gentleman. Anybody who walked up, would get a picture. They'd get to talk for a couple of minutes if we weren't particularly busy. That's why I tried to get as many people as I could to come to the pre-signing, because I knew when we did the regular signings, like to the public, there would be guys who would want to talk, and Jean would want to talk too. He would just stand and just sit and talk with them, right? So he was fantastic. Bauer was always great, and I tell people, you could book Bauer on a Saturday from 1 to 3 o'clock at $15 an autograph to the public in a muddy cornfield, and 200 people would show up. And then you could announce that you're booking him in the same muddy cornfield the next day, and 100 of the same people would come back the next day and get another autograph just so they could talk to Johnny again. He was the kindest, most giving guy. He was just unbelievable, right? Just a super nice guy. I really never had a bad experience with a player. There was one guy that was kind of a jerk the first time that we did a signing together. And when we did a second signing, he was great. And then I ended up getting him a little extra work, and he was my best pal, right? But I mean, you try now to bring in guys, and it's nothing against current players, but they don't need the money, right? Guys like Matthews and stuff like that, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to do a signing with those guys, right? And you look and you see a jersey is now $1,000, $1,200 for these current guys or more. We used to be able to bring Johnny Bauer in for $1,500, and we would sell 150 or 200 autographs at $15 a piece. Johnny would make money. I would make money. I'd have some stuff left over, and everybody was happy. It's just really hard to do that anymore because it's just not worth. I've spoken with players. This was just a little before the shutdowns, but I'd spoken with players, say, from the Leafs in the 90s and 2000s, and I had offered them thousands of dollars, and basically the answer was, I just really don't need the money. I'd rather, and I understand that, you have a limited amount of time, and if you'd rather go fishing with your kids than do an autograph signing, I get it. But it really made me happy to know that a lot of the guys that I was dealing with, when I gave them their payment, and we always paid up front, by the way, that's the thing that really bothers me about autograph signings, is that you should be, if you're thinking about doing this, you should have if not a written contract, at least a verbal contract with the player saying, we're doing this for 2 hours. We expect 200 autographs of you. If we only sell 160, then you're going to sign 40 more things to make me whole. But if we sell more than 200, I'm going to give you extra money. You're going to get X amount of dollars per signing, right? I don't want to say the person's name, but we once did a signing with a player that we expected to do. We'd contracted to do 350 signatures, I think, but almost 200 of them were beforehand for pre-orders and special projects and things like that. So we had 150 left or so going into the public signing, and we ended up doing almost 300 through the public signing. So, you can tell the player knows. They're not dumb. They know they've got 150 to sign. They've signed a bunch, right? So we get done, and the player says, "Oh, that went pretty well, huh?" And he doesn't want to bring it up. They won't, right? They're grateful to just have the opportunity to do this. And I said, "Yeah, that was busier than we had thought, huh?" And I go, I think you sold more autographs than anybody else." He goes, "Yeah, well, you know." And I said, "You think you did a few more than 150, maybe?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't know. I wasn't keeping track or whatever." And I said, "Here." And I handed him an envelope full of money. And he goes, "What's this?" And I said, "That's your extra." And he starts flipping through it and he goes, "Well, how much is here?" And I said, "It's like $1,300. He's like, $1,300? And I go, "Yeah, I told you. If we go beyond the contract, then I'm going to give you X amount of dollars for every one you sign." He couldn't get it through his head. "Well, I don't understand. How come it's so much money?" I said, "It's math. Here's the number times how many we did." And he goes, "Well, I can't take this from you. This is too much." I said, "I didn't do anything. All I did was say he's right over there and take the $15 from him or $20, whatever it was, right? That's all I did. You did all the work." I said, "Realistically, you should be kicking my ass and asking for another $2 an autograph," right? He was so thrilled. And the great thing about that was I never had an instance. If you treat the players right, and then this is not just a player thing, this is anything in life, right? If you treat people right, they will go out and tell people that you treated them right. And if you treat them poorly, they will go out and tell people that you treated them poorly. Pretty quickly, I got a reputation as being fair, paying up front so that when you walked in the door, whatever the fee was, here is your check. Boom, we're done, right? And if there's extra money at the end, you'll get that at the end. So I would get phone calls from other players. "Hey, are you looking for, I'm going to be in town. Are you looking for somebody to come in?" And that's the way it worked, right? It's just not that way anymore, which really kind of sucks. I mean, we've recently, last year in April, we had when we kind of everything opened back up and we were actually starting to do shows again and everything. In one day, we had Kenny Reed from Sportsnet who came up and signed his books. He's a great guy. Kenny's fantastic. We had Mike Krushelniski and we had Denny Maruk. And they were all great, not expensive guys or anything like that. We didn't draw huge numbers or anything, but it was a really good day. Gary Lehman came up this summer, had a great day, So we're still going to be doing stuff like that. But the guys that I really liked working with, they're gone. There is no more Bauer. There is no more Red Kelly, Tony Esposito, Beliveau, all those guys. They're just not around anymore, unfortunately. And the rest of the guys, the more current guys, they're so expensive that, if you're somebody who does a mail order business, and that's not what I do, somebody like Hirsch Bornstein at Frozen Pond or AJ's or Frameworth or somebody like that, where the vast majority of their business is conducted on the web and mail order, you can bring in a guy and pay them $20,000 because you're going to sell all those autographs because you basically have all of North America to deal with. But for me, the days of being able to bring in Bernie Perrant, pay him, give him a sandwich and a Coke for the ride home, right? And everybody's happy. That just doesn't exist anymore, right? So
yeah, you think about the guys. I remember back in the day, like when I was a teenager and going to these auto shows, right? And you call them autograph shows, auto shows, sports card shows. And you got the Bobby Halls of this world, Tony Esposito, Mike Bossy. And some guys, you feel like you see them every single week. It's unbelievable, like how many autographs each of these guys sign in their lives. It's astronomical, the Richard brothers. And a lot of it's hockey players. It's not a coincidence. The nicest sports athletes were always the hockey players compared to other sports. It's just inevitable. And also probably the lowest paid relatively in their respective years. Even now, you look at the 4 professional leagues, hockey players are the lowest paid among all the sports athletes. I mean, look how much the average baseball player makes now. And now when you got guys like Verlander signing 30, 40, $50 million contracts, it's obscene money. If a guy's making $50 million a year, what the heck is he going to need for a couple $1,000? You're 1,000% right. If it's not going to be $50,000 or $100,000, don't even talk to me. So I completely hear you.
And you also have to take that into consideration when you're talking about cards now too. The card companies, they really don't have much leverage when you need Austin Matthews or somebody to sign your cards, and you're not paying them huge money to sign cards because you can't, right? It can be tough to get those guys to sit down, and so you end up with what are called redemptions in the boxes, where here, this is a marker for your card, and when the guy finally signs it, we'll mail it to you, right? Um, I have outstanding redemptions with Panini from 10 years ago that the cards have still never been made. And now what they're doing is they're going in and just arbitrarily saying, well, this card is worth X number of points in our award store. They just told me that I had a dual autograph of Ray Bork and Phil Esposito numbered out of 50, which that card was a $100 to $150 card. And they gave me enough points that the best card I could get was a Zach Metzenberger autograph. Do you remember Zach Metzenberger? Neither does anybody else. He was in camp, and I think he made the Titans one year as a quarterback, and that's it. So my Ray Bork and Phil Esposito dual autograph, numbered out of either 50 or 100, is equivalent to a Zach Metzenberger autograph. And so I'm fighting with them about it right now. And redemptions are a scourge and a plague on the card industry, but it also is kind of a necessary evil because you put the really high-end cards in the packs and then they get banged up and people get mad about that. So,
well, maybe we could start a class action lawsuit with that. And
there already has been.
Oh, of course,
there's been a class.
Of course, there's been.
So the main issue is that not that the redemptions exist, but that they put an expiration date on them. Meaning that if you don't redeem the card within a year or two, then the card doesn't. It's no longer good, right? That was the crux of the lawsuit, was that there was nothing on the outside of the box to say that the redemptions were time sensitive. And a guy went and bought a case of something that was like 5 years old, pulled out a big card, and then they said, well, it's expired. And he said, and I think the guy won, if I'm not mistaken. So now it says on the boxes, may contain time sensitive redemptions, right?
Well, as we sum up today's episode, another class action lawsuit, we're talking now about sports cards and autographs, is All-Star Games. And Wayne, I don't know anymore, my friend. I think this year is really highlighting the fact that All-Star Games are done. I think that they've been done for a while, but they are just, how is anybody spending hard-earned money sitting through these debacles? It is just, it's a travesty. And if we start to look at the ratings as far as best, worst All-Star Games, I would say, for me, the gold standard still is the MLB All-Star Game. There's still some semblance of kind of competitiveness, whatever. The worst has to be the Pro Bowl. And the second worst, probably the NBA game. I think the score is 181, 175. And then you got the Hockey All-Star Game. What are your thoughts on All-Star Games? Are their times done? And is there any way to fix them?
There are a lot of people in each of these four leagues that are a lot smarter and a lot more well paid than I am, that have not been able to come up with a way to make these things compelling, right? I totally understand, especially in the interest of or the instance of football and hockey, that you really do not want to go to the All-Star game and get clobbered and tear an ACL or something like that. I get it, right? But
ask the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah. If you're not going to play the game, then don't play the game, right? Just stop doing this altogether, right? I think maybe there's no way to mitigate risk in totally in these things, right? But I think the NFL used to play a Super Bowl. The Super Bowl champion would play the collegiate all-stars, right? Like, that was a long time ago, but how amazing would that be, right? Or hell, just pick a team somewhere, the Houston Texans or whatever else, something like that, and sprinkle in a few all-stars or something and play that game and play it for charity, right? Or something like that. That would be a lot more interesting. But again, you would get no buy-in because none of the players, first off, want to be made to look like an idiot by a collegiate guy. And second, the collegiate guys are going to be trying hard, right? Somebody's going to get hurt probably. And so they don't want to do that. I just don't know. I don't know how you can not have risk and still have the game. I don't know how you can do both.
What about collegiate undrafted players versus the NFL jobbers? That'd be fun. So the guys in the NFL that are on the fringe and just sitting there on practice rosters and really want to get their opportunity, they get a chance to shine versus the collegiate undrafted guys.
Nobody would watch that game.
Less people than
It's a great idea. I
yes.
would actually like to see that happen anyway, right? But I think what you've just invented is called the XFL. And I want more of that. I want to see more of that sort of competition. I want to see the guys. Look, I think it's become clear over the last 10 or 20 years, especially if you're talking about the NFL, that there are an awful lot of guys out there who simply do not make an NFL roster just because of the circumstance of the roster itself or a bad week or something like that, right? You look at the interchangeability of running backs, which used to be supposedly one of the big skill positions. Now it seems like aside from maybe 3 or 4 guys at any given time, you could just go pick up some other dude, put him in, and he's going to rush for 1,000 yards as long as your blocking is reasonably good. And the guy has some semblance of understanding to be patient for the whole and things like that, right? There are lots of those guys out there. That's why I want to see the XFL and these other leagues. I want to see those guys get a chance because I want to put pressure on the NFL players, right? I want those guys to know, hey, there's 10 guys down here in this league that can step in and probably play just as well as you and ask for half the money, right? But the way I just don't see how you can translate it to an all-star game format. I mean, we talked about this. Baseball is the one game that you're probably not going to get injured playing the game, right? And there's still enough, it's individual enough that it's competition that you feel like, hey, I'm going to try hard at this, right? Because it's such an individual sport that if you show out, and I hate that saying, if you play well in an all-star game, people are going to notice that, right? They're going to see it. But in the other games, and it's going to translate over to them seeing that you have the capability to do X, Y, or Z. The other sports, what are you going to do in those Pro Bowls? That's not going to be, people are just going to be like, oh, well, yeah, but nobody's playing defense. Nobody's hitting. It's not the real game, right? So I don't think baseball has to really do anything. I think baseball is probably fine. The other 3 sports, I just don't really. I mean, basketball, I don't want to watch that, but I don't particularly care for the NBA style of basketball anyway. It's just that on steroids, right? It's just about scoring, and, one-on-one breakdowns and that sort of thing. I don't really care about that anyhow, right? But at least that game still bears some resemblance to the actual game, right? Hockey and football, they just don't.
So what about in football? You have the lowest points team of the year. So the lowest ranked team in the NFL, right? Versus the top team in the XFL. Have them face off, and winner gets to go to the NFL, and the loser has to be relegated to the XFL for 1 year. That's your penalty for being the worst NFL team and losing to an XFL team. That'd be interesting. And then the NBA, the same NBA. Think about it. The worst, let's say the team that tanked in the NBA is just garbage, horrible, facing a top team in the D League. And if the D League team wins, they get promoted to the NBA for 1 year, and the NBA team has to get relegated to the D League. That'd be interesting.
You can't do relegation in those instances because you can't you can't screw the city out of the lease. But what you could do is you could say everybody that played for the Houston Texans, if the St. Louis Battlehawks beat the Houston Texans, they flip rosters. And so now everybody that was on the Battlehawks is now a Houston Texan, and everybody that was a Houston Texan is now on the Battlehawks, right? You know what? I'm all for that type of stuff. I like relegation.
Would they keep their salaries?
No. Well, that's the problem is you've got contracts, right? So how do you make that work? You'd have to write it into the bargaining agreement that was a possibility, right? Just as an aside,
yes,
I was over the weekend, I was watching a little bit about Ukraine and Russia and all that sort of thing. There is a a country there, sort of, between Moldova and I believe it's the Russian border called Teresnia. Teresina. If you get the chance to look this up, it is absolutely insane. Basically, the country doesn't exist on maps, and it's like 3,500 square kilometers, but it's no more than 25 kilometers wide, right? But this country is the only country that still has all of the old USSR stuff up. So all their Lenin statues and everything are still up. But the crazy thing is, they have a team in the same league as Real Madrid. It's called Sheriff something or other, FC, and they play in Terrasol, I think is the name of the town. I was watching a video of two guys who went to this country to kind of walk around and look. And the night they were there was the night that this team, which was the lowest ranked team to ever get into the European League, right, was playing at Real Madrid and beat Real Madrid the night they were there. You get the chance to watch it, it's pretty amazing. And I, I'm interested to learn more about that team and how that team got into the European League, because apparently there was some discussion that this entire country was kind of Russian mafia more than anything else. Apparently, when the Russians left, they left all sorts of arms, and so there was a lot of arms dealing going on and stuff like that. It's fascinating, though. It was really interesting. I really have to find something better to do with my time. I watched a video about that, and then I watched a video about Liechtenstein. So there you go.
But yet you can't find a time to watch wrestling, WWE or AEW, and not enough time on the XFL. So Wayne, you're a fascinating guy. That's why we have you on the show, and a fountain of sports information. And thank you today for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. And you never know which we have an agenda to start the show, and you never know which directions we're going to be going into. People can reach you overseas at Doug Laurie Sports and Doug Laurie Auctions. And any big events coming up in the next little while?
Well, we've got our monthly shows, which you can check out here at the mall at the Kozlov Center on Bayfield Street. And that's once a month. We have 40 to 45 tables of vendors come in with comic books and cards and all sorts of different things. The next one that will be coming up at the time that this airs is March 24th and 25th, the Friday and Saturday. In April, we've got the big show in Toronto at the International Center. That is the 20th through the 23rd of April, I believe. That is sportcardexpo.com with no S. They've already announced some of the autograph guests that are going to be there. John Van Beesbrook, other people. I don't remember off the top of my head right now. But they're doing more of they're bringing in more baseball guys and things. Oh, Chris Mullen's going to be there, the basketball player, Chris Mullen. But they'll announce more guys as we go along there. That's a great show to go to, just to walk around and kind of be overwhelmed by everything available there. And then hopefully in the summer, we'll be getting back to doing more autograph signings and bringing players in and things like that. I hope to bring in a J or two over the season. I don't think any of the Raptors I can afford, unfortunately. But, I would still love to get, Ali, what was the guy's name? The Japanese guy that played for the Jays. The fan. I am Japanese. That guy.
Yes,
yeah. What was his name?
God,
I can't. Kawasaki.
The jobber that went to the Cubs. Yes.
Yes, I would still love to get that guy in. He's my second favorite J of all time after John McDonald.
Can show you how far Wayne's level of baseball fandom is compared to other sports. Well, Wayne, I look forward to that, and if he does come in, let us know, please. And I highly encourage people to reach out to you at Doug Laurie Sports. You're online on social media. And if they have any sports cards questions or they dig up some interesting memorabilia, and Wayne's your guy. So, Wayne, thank you again for joining us. And we'll see you back real soon on The Chosen Life. And as we sum up today, we pull out the guns, right? And we say, keep living the chosen life.
100%. See you soon.
Thanks, Wayne.